It was a chilly morning in downtown Chicago when a man named Thomas Ellington stepped out of his sleek black limousine, the kind of car that screamed wealth and power. He was the CEO of one of the fastest growing tech firms in the country, a man who had built his empire from nothing, or so he loved to say. His custom-made suit fit perfectly, his Rolex gleamed under the city lights, and his phone buzzed with endless notifications from investors and partners. To the world, Thomas was unstoppable. But that morning, fate had something else planned. Just a few blocks away, near a small coffee shop where he stopped every day, sat a homeless man named David. His beard was long, his clothes were worn, and he held a cardboard sign that simply read, "Looking for a chance, not a handout." Most people passed by without even glancing at him. But that morning, David's eyes followed Thomas as he exited the car and began typing furiously on his phone. There was something about the CEO's confidence that caught his attention. When Thomas noticed David staring, he smirked. "What are you looking at, old man?" he said in a tone dripping with arrogance. David didn't flinch. He replied calmly, "Just thinking about how much you could learn if you listened for once." That made Thomas laugh, loudly, almost mockingly. "Learn from you," he said. "You don't even have a roof over your head. What could you possibly teach me?" David just smiled faintly. "Maybe more than you think," he said softly. The CEO, amused by the man's confidence, decided to play along. "All right," Thomas said, adjusting his cufflinks. "Tell me, Mr. Genius, what's your big idea? How would you make money if you were me?" David motioned for him to sit, and to everyone's surprise, Thomas actually did. It was the first time he'd ever sat beside someone who didn't own a suit or a business card. "It's not about how much money you make," David began, "it's about how much value you create. You've built something great, but you've forgotten the people who made it possible." Thomas frowned. "People. My company runs on innovation, not pity." But David shook his head. "Innovation without compassion collapses eventually. Look at your workers. They're overworked, underpaid, and invisible to you. If you don't fix that, your company will fall apart." The CEO rolled his eyes. "You sound like one of those motivational posters. Life isn't about feelings, it's about numbers." David chuckled softly. "That's your first mistake," he said. "You're chasing numbers when you should be chasing purpose. You think being rich makes you successful, but you don't even know what you stand for anymore." Something about those words hit Thomas unexpectedly hard. For a moment, he was silent. But his ego quickly returned. "All right, philosopher," he said sarcastically, "what's your purpose then?" David looked him straight in the eye. "To remind people like you that money can buy comfort, but it can't buy peace." The street noise seemed to fade for a moment. The CEO felt an unfamiliar sting in his chest. "And what would you know about peace?" he asked, trying to sound unmoved. David smiled faintly. "I had everything once. A job, a family, a house. Lost it all when my company's board sold out to yours. You probably don't even remember the name. Ellington Tech bought out my startup 10 years ago. You took my idea and called it innovation." Thomas froze. "Wait, your company was GreenPath Systems." David nodded slowly. "You remember." Thomas's mouth went dry. That small environmental data project he had acquired years ago, the one that skyrocketed his company's growth, was indeed GreenPath. He had never met its founder, but now, he was sitting beside him, homeless and forgotten. David continued, his voice calm but steady. "I didn't lose everything because of business. I lost it because I trusted people who valued profit over people. I learned that when you build something without integrity, it crumbles sooner or later." For the first time in years, Thomas didn't know what to say. The truth hit harder than he expected. He remembered signing the acquisition papers, the celebration, the champagne. But never once had he thought about the people behind the name. The CEO's phone buzzed again, an investor asking about a new deal. He ignored it. "So, what are you saying? That I should give everything away?" David shook his head. "No, I'm saying build something worth remembering. Not just another company. Build a legacy that people will speak about even when you're gone." Thomas leaned back, staring at the city skyline. For years, he had been so focused on competition that he forgot compassion. The thought unsettled him. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. David looked up at the passing clouds. "Because once, I was like you. Arrogant, hungry for success. And I learned too late that success without soul means nothing." Something shifted inside Thomas that day. He stood up, reached into his wallet, and took out a few $100 bills. But David held up his hand. "I don't want your money," he said. I just wanted you to listen. That simple refusal stunned Thomas more than anything. He'd met thousands of people who wanted something from him: money, opportunities, favors. But this man wanted nothing but his attention. Thomas extended his hand instead. Come with me, he said. Let's talk more somewhere warm. David hesitated but eventually nodded. They walked into the nearby cafe. The barista stared as the powerful CEO and the homeless man sat side by side. For the next 2 hours, they talked, not about business deals or profits, but about life, loss, and second chances. By the time the sun began to set, Thomas knew he couldn't just walk away. He arranged for David to stay at a hotel that night. The next day, he brought him to his office, shocking his staff when he introduced David as his new consultant. At first, no one took it seriously. But within weeks, David's insight began changing the entire company culture. He helped design programs to support employee well-being, mental health, and fair pay. Productivity soared, and for the first time, the company wasn't just profitable, it was respected. Reporters soon picked up the story. CEO hires homeless man as advisor, made national headlines. But when asked why, Thomas simply said, "He reminded me what real wealth means." Months later, during a press conference, someone asked David what it felt like to be back in business. He smiled. "It's not about being back," he said. "It's about being seen." Thomas watched from the side of the stage, proud but humbled. The man he once mocked had become his greatest teacher. Years passed, and their partnership grew into something extraordinary. Together, they founded a new foundation aimed at helping struggling entrepreneurs rebuild their lives, especially those who'd lost everything chasing success. And every time Thomas was asked about his turnaround, he'd tell the same story: the morning he laughed at a homeless man's idea, and how that man's first words changed his life forever. Because in that moment, he realized the truth: greatness isn't measured by wealth, but by the courage to learn from those the world overlooks. Even now, if you walk by that same cafe in Chicago, you might see a plaque on the wall that reads, "Innovation without compassion collapses." It's a reminder of the day a billionaire met a homeless visionary, and learned that the greatest investments aren't made in stocks, but in people.